or any clarification that needs to be made. I also want to request there is a sign-up or a attendance sheet. There's one on the back over there on the right for the Buddha side, and on the scissor side there's also an attendance sheet. If you would like to gain more information, or if you'd like to volunteer or help with doing research on food products or any other aspect of HFSAA, you are welcome to leave us your information, and you can initiate, or you can indicate whether you want to receive communication or if you'd like to help out. So either in the middle of the presentation or at the end of the presentation, if I can ask for those that are interested to at least do the sign-in sheet that's in the back there. So Bismillah, processed foods. So the first question is, why do we preserve food in the first place? Why do we process them? And preserving or processing foods is nothing new. We've been doing it for centuries, since the beginning of when humans were created. We've been preserving food in order to extend our longevity. So we preserve food for preservation, extending life of food, shelf life for modern day. So if you're in the grocery store and you have a product that you'd like to sell to the community, if it were to spoil within a few days, you lose out on that capital. So extending that shelf life as long as you can is another reason why we preserve food. And the idea of processed foods is anything that is deliberate by a human being. So any human that intervenes in changes, whether it be the chemical properties or any other aspect of the food, would be considered a type of preservation and process that is done. So some examples of processed foods for those that are, when you eat Kit Kats or Gatorade or any smoked salmon, this is all a type of preservation. Traditionally, Lodi and jerky and these other things that are made, these are also traditional ways of preserving food, whether you're making a chutney or you're putting acids or you're adding different ingredients together to extend the shelf life of that product. Here in the United States, we do it a specific way where you have candies and drinks and tomato sauce. Other parts of the world do something similar. They just have different methods. But it's the exact same concept, just in a different way. So the Japanese, they would use soy sauce, a way of fermenting product in order to preserve it. So preserving food preservation, the main way of preserving food is to stop it from spoiling. That's basically what we're doing when we're preserving any type of food. And how do we stop food from spoiling in the first place? That has been the question here. And in the processed food world, through different scientific experiments, they figured out that there are very specific variables that you need to control in order to stop food from spoiling. And the main culprit here with stopping food spoilage is bacterial growth. So if you see that mold that grows on an old piece of bread or any milk that has a foul-smelling odor to it, this is all a type of bacteria that has grown in it, and it makes it not palatable for the human consumption. And so stopping bacteria, there are 6 variables that you would like to control. And if you can control these 6 variables, you'll have a product that is well preserved, very well preserved. And these 6 variables are food, so this is anything with a carbon base. You have acidity. You want to control the pH, make sure that the acidity is controlled, whether you want to make it acidic or basic. Either way will help stop bacteria from growing. You have time. You want to cut off the amount of time that bacteria has access to either the carbon, the acidity, moisture, oxygen, and a set temperature. So when we preserve food, we can put it in the freezer, making it very, very cold, which slows the bacteria from growing. You can take out the moisture of it, make it jerky. As you take out the moisture from the product, you dehydrate it, you will have less bacterial growth. If you heat something up, cook it at over 135 to up to 165, it will kill the bacteria. Acidity, same thing. If you add acid to a product, or if you would make it very basic, it would do the same thing. It would preserve it. So, just out of curiosity, who's ever eaten a Twinkie in here? I don't reluctantly, most people are raising their hands, but if you take a Twinkie, this is one of the most well-preserved products that are on the shelf today. If you take a Twinkie from 20 years ago, when you took one from 2 months ago, you wouldn't really see the difference between the two. The amount of bacterial growth that happens over that long span of time is very insignificant. And they have somewhat perfected this method of controlling all 6 variables to where you can leave a product on the shelf for years on end and you would never lose your money on that product because someone can pick it up and eat it and it'll be just the way it was if somebody were to make it a week before. So this is when you're doing any type of preservation, all you're doing is manipulating these 6 different variables in order to create a product. And this is important because I'm going to relate it to the halal industry soon, but why is it important in the first place? And the reason why it's important in the first place is that since we live here in the United States and we have a governing body, we have a government, we have rules, we have regulations, we have an entire industry that is created to monitor this specific process in this system. And they call themselves by different names. In the U.S. government, you have the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, you have the USDA, you have the FDA, and each one of them have a specific function. And we as a Muslim community can look at what the laws and the regulations are here in the United States already and see how it can actually help the Muslims in those things that are important to us, making sure that we eat clean, we make sure that we eat halal food, and how can we use the systems that are already in place so that we don't have to do the exact same things all over again. 2 of the main bodies that we're going to talk about is, one is the USDA, which is in charge of livestock, meat and poultry, and my colleague spoke about that last month about slaughter practices and animal welfare and how those products become halal. And the USDA specifically deals with livestock and anything that is related to animals, how it's slaughtered, and so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to processed food and non-livestock, we have the the FDA. And for a good chunk of my presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the FDA and what is the role and the functionality of the FDA. Now, in the first sentence there, right in the beginning, it tells you that the main role and the responsibility of the FDA is to protect the public's health. Now, the only thing that they're concerned with, the main thing that the FDA is concerned with and the USDA is concerned with, is that consumers of those that live inside the United States, regardless of where you're from, what religion you're from, is that you will not get sick immediately, meaning you won't eat it and die from that product, and you won't die in the future from that product that you're consuming. That is all they're concerned about. They don't care about what your religious dietary laws are, what your restrictions are. It's am I going to protect the or the American consumer from getting sick immediately, or are they going to get sick in the future, right? Whether it's going to cause you to get obese, or it's going to cause you to have other problems, or not have your du'as be accepted, that's a completely side thing for them, and they're not worried about it. They just want to know, if you eat that Twinkie, are you going to die from it? That's all it is. And if you're going to get obese or something else happens, that's a byproduct of what they need to do. And so within the FDA, you have HACCP plans, you have good manufacturing practices, you have SurfSafe, you have the health department and the health inspectors. All of this falls under the FDA. Now, this is important. It's very important for everybody to remember, look at it, and just have a general idea of what this means. So the FDA runs on something called GRAS. And GRAS is generally regarded as safe. So if they want to know if a product is going to harm someone, there's many, many chemicals out there. There are different products that are extracted out of the ground. There are new ways of extracting products. There's new ways of preserving products. Now, the FDA looks towards the industry. If you're a chemist, if you're a biologist, if you're a specialist in a specific field, and they will ask those individuals in that field that this chemical that's coming out, is somebody going to immediately die from consuming this? Or are they going to die in the future from consuming this product? And if it's generally regarded as safe, then it will be allowed into your product. That's the main understanding of what GRAS is and how products are introduced into the market and different chemicals are introduced into the market until the FDA is able to do long-term research and either pull an ingredient or continue using that ingredient in products. So GRAS is important, and this is important because here in the United States, and for the Muslims especially, we have dietary laws and restrictions in what we can and cannot consume. Now, other parts of the world don't have these same sensitivities as we do. If you were to see a scorpion on a steak deep fried, most people wouldn't consume it, right? It would be something that is considered to be nasty. However, on the other side of the world, you can find products like that, where you'll find a deep fried tarantula or scorpion and those sort of things, and people will consume them. Now, the FDA does not care if you like to eat one thing or another, as long as it's not going to get you sick and you're not going to die. They will allow it to be inside of your product. We'll go through a little bit of labeling laws and why it's important to know how to understand what a label has on it, how we as Muslims can actually benefit from reading those labels, how to read a label, how do we understand allergy claims, what's a nutritional fact, how does this all play out. Now, this is what a label normally looks like. So, if you were to So if you look up here, you have your calorie intake, you have the different type of nutrients that are broken down, and they're in here for a specific reason that the FDA requires. So you need to know how much sugar content's in there, fibers in there, what type of proteins are in there. The main part that we would want to be worried about, even though this is important for those that need it, if you are trying to, if you have diabetes, if you have hypertension, if you have these different type of health issues, this part here is relevant to you. And it's important to know what kind of products you're consuming and what's inside of it. But for the general public of the Muslims, the main aspect, the most important, is this right here. The list of ingredients and how it's labeled. Now, on the ingredient list, as you see down here, right, you have grains, you have corn syrup, and different ingredients that are listed down this way. Now, all of these ingredients are listed out in order of weight. So whatever has the most amount of weight or volume within that product. So a Gatorade will have water, and then it'll have sugar, then it'll have glycerol, then it'll have colorings and natural flavors, and it'll keep going down in descending order. And so the majority, the one that has the most in there, would come first, and then it would slowly get less and less and less until it gets to a point where it says less than 0.2% of ingredients, and it'll just keep listing it down. Now, as it keeps going down, and the ingredients get smaller and smaller and smaller, at what point do you say that it's too insignificant for it to be labeled, right? If you have 1,000 ingredients in there, and majority of it is like 500, do you list the last 500 ingredients that are inside of your product, or you don't? And so the FDA also has this same dilemma. How small do you need to go before you can say that, you know what, we don't have to label it anymore? Now, why is this important for us as Muslims? Who's taking a basic fit class here? Basic fit class, where they tell you about different type of najasa. And if you remember, there is the example of you're in a village, there's a well, and if a chicken falls into a well and dies, you have to do something in order to purify that water, right? And then if a cow dies in there, there's a certain percentage of water you need to take out before it becomes purified. What if a pig falls into that water? How much water do you need to take out of it before it becomes purified? What if you have a small body of water and you just drop one drop of urine in there? Are you allowed to drink that water, or are you not allowed to drink that water? What amount is considered to be too insignificant for you to say that, you know what, at this point, we don't have to worry about it anymore? Or maybe if it is a bottle of water and you put one drop of urine in there, that is a significant amount, and we were not allowed to drink this water anymore, right? So the FDA has the same exact issues. How much in this manufacturing process of, droppings from animals or rodents or other things are we going to allow in there before we say that, you know what, it has to be pulled, or you have to label it and let the consumers know that it has this specific ingredient in it. This is very relevant to us. And knowing what those cutoff points are is very relevant. And so the FDA has that same issue, and it has that. And so what they call is something called trace amounts. Something that they believe is so insignificant that you don't have to label it anymore. So anything less than 0.5% of the final concentration is considered to be insignificant. And you don't have to label it and put it on the ingredient list. So keep going down. Once it hits 0.5%, you're a free game to put what you want and not label it anymore. This will be important when we come around later on, when we go into the different industries, and whether you're allowed to label alcohol or other type of things inside of your product. This will be significant at that time. Keep going with labeling laws. Sometimes what happens is you'll have one product that has many different names. It has a chemical name, it has an industry name, it has a common name, or it just gets a bad name and they need to change the name. So who remembers high fructose corn syrup and having that be associated with the bad rep, right? High fructose corn syrup was associated with getting people obese and large, and it got a bad rep. So you just change the name. You don't have to call it high fructose corn syrup anymore. You can call it modified cornstarch. Same exact product, different name. One time, it used hydrogenated oils used to get a bad rep. Trans fats. I don't know if anybody remembers trans fats. Trans fats got a bad name. Just change the name. Hydrogenated soybean oil. It's the same exact product, different name. You just change it to make it whatever is beneficial for the manufacturer. Now, the FDA does not have any problems with doing this. As long as they know what that product is, you can call it what you want to call it. You can give it its chemical name or you can give it its common name. As long as they know what it is, you can label it as you like. Now, chemical preservatives. Chemical preservatives would be listed out like this. You have bananas. Who's ever opened up a banana before and just let it sit on the table? What happens if you let it sit for like an hour? It turns like black, right? It turns brown. Apples. No one likes brown guacamole. No one likes brown bananas. No one likes their apples brown. However, with these different fruits, you have enzymatic browning. As soon as you introduce oxygen to the banana, the apple, the avocado, and the many different fruits and vegetables that are out there, you see them start changing color. And by changing color, it becomes unappealing for people to consume. And you can add different type of chemicals to it in order to make it keep its fresh color. So next time you take an apple and you cut it up, squirt a little lemon juice on it and see what happens. And this is why you put guacamole always has acidity associated with it. You put a lime in there, or you put some lemon, so it keeps that nice, fresh green color that everybody likes to see. And so the FDA would require you to label something like that. And so what you would do is you say your bananas here, you put the different ingredients, and then you'd add ascorbic acid, which will stop the bananas from turning brown. And then they're supposed to tell you why. So the reason why here is to promote color retention. To tell you the exact reason why that chemical is there. However, like any organization, any governing body, you want to pick and choose when you want to put your foot down and say that someone needs to do something or not. So a lot of times on a label, you will not find this. They won't tell you that it's for color retention. It takes up too much space on the label. And the FDA is not going to pick a fight over this because they don't need to. It's not harming you. You're not dying from it immediately, and you're not going to die from it in the future if you know that it's only there for retaining color, right? And so they also choose when they're going to implement and when they're not going to implement their laws. On the opposite effect, though, they won't put their foot down when it comes to why you put a chemical name in there. When it comes to allergens, that 0.5% that I told you about earlier is insignificant. They don't care. It doesn't matter if you have 0.00001% of allergens in there. They will make sure that you write it inside of your label. Whether you put it explicitly in there or you say it down here that it was manufactured in the same facility or it was anywhere near it, they will make sure that the consumer knows exactly what's inside of that product when it comes to allergens. And why is that? It's because they're there to make sure that no one dies from it. You have such allergens in this country that people are allergic to peanuts that they will have a dog come and sniff a room out, a classroom, to make sure that there's no scent of it in the air before they allow the child to walk into that room. Because that's how allergic he is, and he will be sent to the hospital, and he can die from that. And so the FDA wants to make sure that no one dies on their watch when it comes to allergens, and they will take this very seriously. And that trace amount that I talked about before has no significance, because that's something that's important to them. And so how do we use this to our benefit? Because as Muslims, I think here there's a lot of brothers and sisters that follow the Hanafi madhab. We can actually use this because shellfish is considered to be an allergen. And those people that want to stay away from shellfish and bottom feeders of the ocean, you can actually use the FDA labeling laws to your advantage only to an extent. Because not all shellfish are considered to be a food allergen. Crustaceans are such as the major ones that are like lobster and shrimp. Those are allergens. But scallops and mussels and clams and oysters are not considered to be food allergens, and they will not label that even if it's in a small amount. So you can use labeling laws to help you understand if there's any type of shellfish in there, if that's what you're trying to avoid. But also know that it has limitations, because some shellfish will not be labeled, such as oysters and these sort of things, if it's in small amounts. These are major food allergens that will be labeled. And the crustaceans is the one that we're looking at here. And those crustaceans are this guy here. You have the different types that they would show. And these are some of the major ones that the society consumes. Another labeling law in how it is written out is something called natural flavors, spices, artificial flavors. If you have any of that inside of your product, all labeling laws require is that it is comma separated. So as you go down the list, you separate it by commas, and you just write down spices, what spices mean. FDA has a specific list of what spices mean, but you don't have to tell them what it is. You can just put spices as long as it meets that requirement. Natural flavors, artificial flavors, same thing, as long as it's listed there. It's your responsibility as a consumer to go back to the FDA website and ask the FDA, what do they mean by spices? What do they mean by natural flavors, and what do they mean by artificial flavors? They are not going to disclose that information to you. You as a consumer has to go back and find out what does that mean. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the FDA means when they say natural and artificial flavors. Now, moving along, this here, recipe standardization, is what makes or breaks a company. The longevity of your company, the longevity of your product, whether you make it in this society or not, all depends on one thing, and that's called recipe standardization. Recipe standardization is that no two oranges taste exactly the same. You guys have a lot of orchards out here. You have a lot of different types of groves. If you go to Orchard Grove and you pick an orange from the same exact tree, one from one part, one from another part, cut it in half and eat it. One will be bitter, one will be sweet. One will be sour, one will be bland. And they're all from the exact same tree. Now, when you go over thousands and thousands of different trees from different parts of the country and different parts of the world, how do you make a Minute Maid, a drink, taste exactly the same every single time? How does your apple juice taste exactly the same when two different apples don't taste the same? When two different oranges aren't the same? How do they all taste exactly the same? And for you as a consumer, if you go into a burger shop and you were to find a burger and it was amazing the first time you ate it, so you took your friends and you went there a second time, and the second time you went there it was burnt. It was overcooked and it was crispy and it was too salty. You might give it a second chance. You know, they might have messed up when the chef or something happened. He got sick. You come back another day and it's raw. And it's pink and it's raw. And you can see the blood dripping from it. And that's not something that you're used to. You probably won't go a third time. And you're definitely not going to bring your friends. Every industry understands this. And they want to have the same burger that you have here in California, the same as the one that you have in New York. This is why McDonald's, no matter where you go in the world, it tastes exactly the same. Their fries taste the same. Their burgers taste the same. It's the exact same flavor profile. How do you do that? How do you make that happen when you know, as a fact, when you go right outside and pick those trees, it won't taste the same? It's called recipe standardization, and making sure that you give that same flavor and profile again and again. How do you do that? You do it with natural flavors and artificial flavors. And the thing that you're tasting. Who's ever had there's this yellow licorice type of candy out there. It's a banana flavor. They have like strawberry flavors, they have a few other ones, but there's a banana flavored one. I forget the name, but it comes in a yellow packet, it's kind of long. Laffy Taffy, exactly. Who's tasted the banana? Does that banana taste like the bananas that you at the store? Nothing like it, right? So, just a short history of banana. The original banana used to taste like that. Used to taste like Laffy Taffy. That's the original banana flavor. That banana used to be, it's something called the Banana Republic. Not the store, the Banana Republic in the Southern America, or Central America, where they grow a lot of bananas. Now, it's a monoculture. There's one type of banana tree that's out there, and that one banana tree that was there was prone to getting a specific type of fungus, a bacteria that would kill that banana tree. Something that we talked about in the beginning, right? The 6 different variables that you want to use in order to stop bacteria from growing on a product. Now, that specific banana was very prone, highly prone to having a specific disease that would hit it, and it would kill all their crops. And the British were the ones that created that specific strain, so they did not want to take a chance on that banana losing its harvest. So they opted out for an inferior quality banana, for a superior quality banana, knowing that the taste would change, but no one would know the difference. And so you eat the Laffy Taffy, but it tastes nothing like the banana you eat today. And within a generation, no one knows that the original banana used to taste like that. And everybody thinks bananas taste the way it does today with the new version of the banana that we had. Now that happens to other types of fruits and vegetables that are out there. Just one example of something that was preserved, that flavor profile that was preserved for bananas at that time. That's the flavor that you taste. That's the artificial flavor that they created. They identified what made that banana taste that way, and they made every Laffy Taffy afterwards taste exactly the same. And so how do you do this? You make natural and artificial flavors. What is the definition of a natural flavor? The FDA gives this long list of what a natural flavor is. And as long as your product has something in this definition, whether it's a root, whether it's an extract, whether it's it's eggs or poultry or some sort of meat, if it's from a natural source, the FDA will allow you to write natural sources or natural flavors. You can write natural flavors on the product and not have to tell the consumer what's inside of it. You can have one of these ingredients, or you can have 1,000 of these different ingredients in it. If it all comes from a natural flavor or this definition, you don't have to tell the consumer what's inside of it. Natural flavors can come from other natural flavors. And none of this has to be disclosed to the consumer. Why is this problematic for us as Muslims? Because if it comes from a meat source, if it comes from shellfish, if it comes from poultry, if it comes from dairy products, if it comes from fermented products, these are problematic for the Muslims, and we would like to know what's inside of those natural flavors so that we don't consume anything that is impermissible. Artificial flavors is the opposite of natural flavors. Anything that comes from an artificial source. A synthetic source would be considered an artificial flavor, and you can actually label that on your product without telling the consumer where it's from. Now, this is important again because both of those fall into proprietary information. The proprietary information is in 2 different categories. One is the actual ingredients inside of your product. The other one is the processes and the method by which you created that process, that product. Sometimes they will not let a person into a manufacturing facility because they have a specific way of making a product. And if their competitor finds out how to make the same product, they can put them out of business. And if you know what's inside of Coke, and if you know what's inside of Pepsi, you can create a competitor that can create the exact same product and put them out of business as well. So they will guard this, and they will guard their recipes, and they do not have to share this information with the public. And one example is this is interactification. Interactification from the time that I researched it is something that does not have to be labeled at all inside of a product. Now, interactification is you take different types of fats and you blend it and you make a new type of fat. Now, you can take animal fat, you can take vegetable fat, you can take different types of fats and create a new fat that's desirable to you in the industry and make it available for the consumers. And if it falls within interactification, you don't have to tell the consumers how you made that product and what sources you used in order to make that. If you're a fast food restaurant, right, the reason why McDonald's and these other fast food chains can give you cheap products is they can have high school kids, unskilled individuals work in a facility and know how to flip a burger without getting anyone sick and give you the exact same quality. Because even on the cheese, the type of fat that is created, they know that within 30 seconds or within that minute, this cheese will melt exactly to this form. They know exactly at what temperature and within which time that cheese will melt and look exactly the same every single time. And you don't need to have a skilled person to have an eye of knowing how to cook. You can teach them how long it needs to be on there and when to take it off to get the exact same product. So interacidification can create these different properties within a fat or within a product. And no one would ever have to know about it. So if they use lipase in there, if they use rennet, if they use different types of enzymes to create it, you wouldn't know. And lipase and enzymes is something I will go over and why that's important for us to know about. Monodiglycerides, I bring this in because there's something here called E number. And E numbers are important because for us in the United States, we don't talk about E numbers. However, for those that go to England and they go to Europe, they use something called E numbers. So the same list that we had with all those different ingredients, you wouldn't see names, you wouldn't see letters, you would see numbers. E41, 471, all these different E's. And it's responsibility of you as a consumer to go back to the European Union's website and look up what each one of those E numbers mean and what ingredient does it really identify with. So this is what I wanted to indicate here. Monodiglycerides, important for us as Muslims because it is a fat that is broken up into two different chains. And those can come from animal sources or plant sources. And if it does come from an animal source, the source of that animal is important to know because if it was slaughtered improperly, the fat of that animal is also impermissible. Colors, as you see this little bug over here, it can be written different ways. You can have natural red 40, natural red 4, carmine, cochineal. So these three right here all mean the exact same thing. Natural red 40, carmine, cochineal bug is this bug here. You can squeeze the insides of it and it gives a nice red color. With enough of that color, you can create a natural red that would be used inside of your products. Because when you eat M&Ms, are they all kind of the same color? They like different colors. And most of the industry, people like choice, even if it's artificial. So having different colors and different color gummy bears and different color candies, even though they all taste the same, makes them more appealing. And it gives you a variety of people that you can appeal towards. So here in the United States, we use a lot of natural red 40, which is not from the bug. In Europe, they use a lot of natural red 4, which is from this bug, carmine and cochineal. So if you're eating M&Ms here in the United States and it's red colored and you're eating them up and you think it's okay because it's natural red 40, Bismillah, you're fine. But if you go to England to visit your cousins and you want to eat M&Ms there, you might want to think twice, because that same red color all of a sudden comes from this bug. And for those that follow the Hanafi madhab, creepy crawlers become a problem. Eating bugs and eating different types of creepy crawlers become a problem. We have some of the ulama here in the back. You can ask them about why creepy crawlers are not allowed and why you're not allowed to eat different type of insects. So, but for labeling laws, like I said, the FDA does not care whether you're sensitive to eating bugs or not eating bugs. If it's not going to kill you, you can use it. And if an industry representative tells you that this bug is not going to harm you, it's considered to be grass, you can also use it. Which takes me to this guy here, which is the beaver. And the beaver has something called castoreum. And from the anal glands of the beaver, you can get something called castoreum. And it has a type of raspberry flavor that you can extract from it. It sounds very gross and nasty, and it was used in colognes, it is used in perfumes, and it is used in some confectionaries. I want to make this very clear. This is not very common. Maybe 300 pounds a year. 300 pounds a year worldwide. Not just the United States, worldwide, maybe 300 pounds. Maybe. But I bring it up for the reason of grass again, generally regarded as safe. We all find it very nasty to consume something that will come from the anal glands of a beaver. If it's not going to get you sick, it's not going to kill you, the FDA will allow it into your products. Now, this next part I'm going to move into a few different industries that is common for the Muslims. We should know what alcohol is. We live here in the United States, we live in the Western world. Alcohol is very common, and it is not just something that you buy at a liquor store. It is used in different products. And we should know how it's made, when it's permissible, when it's not permissible. And there's cheese, a lot of cheeseburgers and different things that everybody wants to consume. Breads, gelatin, just a few different industries that I like to go into. This is an introductory course, a high-level overview, so I won't go into extreme detail. I do those through other courses, but for the general public, at least have an introduction to what it is and how common it is within our processed foods. So the first thing I want to make a distinction of when it comes to alcohol is something called fermentations. Everyone associates fermentation with alcohol, and everything that's alcohol is fermented. However, they're not synonymous with one another. Fermentation is a process. Alcohol is something as an end product. And so they're completely separate from one another. There are a lot of things that go through fermentation. Anybody that eats yogurt, it went through a fermentation process. If you eat kimchi, if you eat ketchup, all of these things go through a fermentation process. However, the end product is not an alcohol product. It's not alcohol fermentation. So there's alcohol fermentation and there is non-alcohol fermentation. So just because something is fermented does not necessarily mean that it is haram, nor does it mean that it is alcohol in the end and you're going to get intoxicated by it. And so these are all types of fermentation. This is the one where it's alcohol. However, your chocolate, your yogurt, your kimchi, your ketchup, and many other products that are out there go through fermentation. They just do not intoxicate you. So just making that first distinction. However, what is alcohol fermentation? Alcohol fermentation has these basic steps in it. To make alcohol, which I highly recommend that no one does at home, it is a very simple process. It is a very deadly process if you don't know what you're doing. It will, if you make it at home, you can die from it. It's not just intoxicating. There is different chemicals that are created when you're making alcohol that can kill people. And so this is one of the other reasons why it would be illegal to make it. So you need sugar, a basic sugar. The source of that sugar dictates how strong that alcohol is going to be. The alcohol that comes from dates and grapes and from potatoes are going to be much stronger than the alcohol that's made from wheat, barley, these different type of starches. So you need a sugar source, you need a yeast source, and then water, and then you need lack of oxygen. And the lack of oxygen is what makes it go into a alcohol fermentation process, and you leave it over time. So you take a glass, cup, add sugar, add water, add some yeast, shake it up. As soon as you close the top, the moment you close the top, this is when the alcohol fermentation process starts. As long as you leave the top open, alcohol fermentation will not happen. The bacteria, once it has no oxygen and is starting to die, that bacteria needs something to survive on, so it starts targeting, the yeast starts targeting the sugars, and it eats the sugars, and it consumes it in order to survive. And as it consumes the sugars, the byproduct is the OH group, and it creates that alcohol, is what is desirable for certain societies that they would want to consume and drink. Now, after about a week, if you open it up, you would have alcohol in that product. Like I said, I highly discourage anyone from ever trying this, not just because of the harmful aspect of it, but you will, if you do it wrong, you will actually die from that product. Now, alcohol can come from many different sources, and one thing I do want to talk about alcohol is look at all the different sources that you can get it from. You can make it from dates, grapes, apples, grains, corn, vegetables, potatoes, and each one of them have a very unique and specific effect. Cassava, which is a root, right? Artichokes. They make alcohol from many different things, and they're not all the same. And here, as Muslims, I know we have a type of allergic reaction to alcohol, and rightfully so. Knowing a little bit of the history of alcohol in the Western world is important, and understand why it's so important to the consumer here in the United States and those that live in Europe. Though it's not an important thing in the Muslim world, it's not important to us on that side of it. Drinking alcohol in the Western world guaranteed the survival of your children and your offspring for years to come. Unlike the Muslim world, the Europeans did not understand what clean water meant. They didn't take a basic fit class. They don't understand what running water meant. They didn't know that you would take a body of water and you could smell it, you could taste it, you could see the color change, and say that, you know what, not only can I not make wudu with this water, I can't drink this water. That concept of flowing water, water flowing, stagnating water, small bodies of water versus large bodies of water is a foreign concept to the Europeans. And so for them, drinking water was considered to be hazardous, and it would actually kill you if you were to drink their water. And the only way you would survive is that you would take your water and ferment it with different types of vegetables, grapes, or whatever it was. The alcohol fermentation process kills the bacteria by which you can drink that drink, and it will not kill you. You will not die from cholera. You will not die from the different diseases that are out there. And so alcohol becomes a very coveted and important aspect of the Western world. Whereas you can read the United States history, and when they say the founding fathers went to go write up the document that liberated them from the English, they all went to the pub, and from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep, they would drink a minimum of 7 to 8 different glasses of alcohol, because that was their survival. And not only within the last century did the Western world figure out what contaminates water, and that is the actual bacteria that's inside the water that causes them to die or causes you to get sick. And with the invention of chlorine is how they move themselves into this different position. So you have to understand why it's important, why they covet alcohol, even though we might look down upon it for the intoxicating portion. As a society without the deen, they would have never known, what real drinking water was and how they can survive for long periods of time without it. So for us, when it comes to alcohol, not all these alcohols are exactly the same. For the Muslims, we make a distinction between alcohol that comes from these two sources versus alcohol that comes from all these different sources. Alcohol has an intoxicating effect of it, which is considered to be haram. It also has another aspect to it for something that comes from dates and grapes, and that's considered to be najis. And from a basic fifth class, when we took najis, najis is what? Who could tell me what are the different sources of najis? Anyone? Yes? Okay, so the heavy one, what's the heavy one? It would be what sources? Urine, feces, flowing blood, right? So this alcohol here has the quality of urine and feces. This is what we would consider this type of alcohol. However, the alcohol that comes from all of these ones are not considered to be from urine and feces. They would be the intoxicating portion. Which is important for us to distinguish, because if you drink Gatorade, and you drink these different type of products, if you drink Coke, if you eat anything that has a natural flavor, artificial flavors, they all have alcohol in it, whether you like it or not. They have something called trace amounts of alcohol, a flavor carrier. Remember when I told you that recipe standardization, that not all Minute Maid taste the same, or not all oranges taste the same? In order for you to enhance the quality of that banana flavor or that orange flavor, you would submerge it in a cheap corn-based alcohol to enhance it and make sure that that's the flavor that you taste. So this is important for us as Muslims to know the distinction between the grape and date source and the non-date and grape source. Because no matter what you do, when you go to the grocery store, 80% of the products that are out there have a type of alcohol in it. And the source of that alcohol is important, because all natural flavors, artificial flavors are carried in alcohol. Now, when it comes to alcohol and alcohol labeling in the United States, it's important for us to know what it is and how it will be labeled on a product. So the FDA just makes a distinction between a non-alcoholic beverage and an alcohol-free beverage. Non-alcoholic and alcohol-free sound exactly the same, and in our minds, there's no distinction. Non-alcoholic, alcohol-free should be the same thing. However, they're not the same, and they're not labeled the same. A non-alcoholic beverage is your soft drinks, fruit drinks, apple juice, orange juice, Gatorade, any type of soft drink that's out there is considered to be non-alcoholic. Alcohol-free is something that has no trace amounts of alcohol in it. In the FDA, what I told you, at what point, as the ingredients get lower and lower and lower, you say that it's okay, you don't have to label it anymore. For non-alcoholic drinks at 0.5% of the final concentration, if it has alcohol in it, they'll say, it's okay, don't worry about it. You don't have to label it anymore. This is problematic for us because with the grapes and dates, if you were to take the alcohol completely out of that wine bottle, completely out, if there's alcohol out there, there's wine bottles that say 0% alcohol-free wine. You can take all the intoxicating portions out of it, but you can't take the najis out of that thing. So even though it's alcohol-free wine, you can't take the najis part out of it. So it's still considered to be urine and feces, so you can't drink that alcohol-free, right? You can't drink that alcohol-free wine bottle. So this is important for us because if a product has wine-based alcohol in it, the najis portion is still there. However, given the fact that a lot of products do have alcohol in it, and most of the time it is from a cheap corn-based source, our ulama of the past, Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, has made that distinction and gave us a leeway by which we can consume your apple juices and your grape juices and your Gatorades because it has this small trace amount of alcohol in it that's not intoxicating and it's not najis. Because it doesn't have these two qualities, there is room for permissibility and it opens up the door for consuming products that otherwise would be very difficult for the Muslim consumer in the United States to consume. Like I said, 80% plus of the products that are out there have this type of alcohol in it, and trying to avoid it makes your life even more difficult than it has to be. And it's interesting that the FDA here on their own came up with a number of 0.0 or 0.5% of the final concentration. We as an organization, HFSAA, are an offshoot of an organization that came out of South Africa, the South African National Halal Authorities. The ulama in South Africa, who have nothing to do with the FDA, who don't really care about U.S. labeling laws or how the government functions, they themselves came up with a 0.5% final concentration amongst their group of ulama that were there. And they gave that ruling for the products that contain alcohol that was not from a najis source to be allowed and consumed by the Muslim consumer. And we as an organization have also accepted that same amount. And it so happens that it coincides with the FDA ruling of 0.5%. So it's not something that we took from the government. It is an independent agreement that came from the ulama of South Africa that we also adapted and we implement in order to make it easier for the Muslims to consume many products that are out there. Now, since we're talking about alcohol, some products have something called sugar alcohol in it. If you call a manufacturer, they'll tell you that we have sugar alcohol. Does sugar alcohol intoxicate you? So sugar alcohol, in this specific way, alcohol has the meaning of fermentation, intoxicating, but alcohol has another meaning to its name. It means to enhance and to increase. So in this sense, when we say sugar alcohol, like xanthol and these different sugar alcohols that are used in sugar-free gums and sugar-free products, and who uses the little red packets inside of their coffees or their teas? They have a little red packet or a little blue packet of artificial sugar. Those are sugar alcohols. They're fake sugars that little red packet is 1,000 times stronger than one packet of sugar. That's how much enhancement or sweetness level you're gonna get out of that one little red packet versus 1,000 of the regular brown raw cane sugar packets that you use. So here, sugar alcohol means to enhance. So that aspartame that people consume is a sugar alcohol. It has nothing to do with sugar. It has nothing to do with alcohol fermentation or intoxicating. And so for that reason, it would be permissible to consume, though I would, take a double take with actually consuming it because of health reasons. Just something that's out there. So with alcohol, this is we're talking about wine and how wine has najis in it and you can't consume it. What if you get red wine vinegar, white wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar, different types of vinegars that are out there? So vinegar, in order to make vinegar, you have to make alcohol first. You have to create some sort of wine, some sort of alcohol fermentation has to happen in order for you to make vinegar. Remember that bottle that I was telling you about making alcohol, shutting the top, leaving it for a week? Once you open the top and you release it and you let the oxygen start hitting the alcohol bottle that you created, at that point, you get a reduction and you start going into the vinegar making process. So the alcohol, this is why they come with that little cork. You have to stick the cork in it and keep it plugged, because if you let it oxidate, it's going to start turning into vinegar on its own, and you're going to get red wine vinegar. It's no longer going to be an alcohol anymore if you leave it out for a long period of time. Now, there is a difference within the different madhabs. Like with the Shafi'is, a human being cannot intervene and make it into a vinegar. With the Hanafis, we have leeway. Humans can make vinegar. You can open up the top. You can create vinegars. Whether they come from grapes or dates or they come from something else, you can create a vinegar. It will have trace amounts of alcohol. However, because it is an exception that the Prophet ﷺ made for vinegar, that he allowed it and he ate it, this is the reason why we allow red wine vinegar and these sort of things. And we would not allow a wine bottle that you would take out all the intoxicating portion out of it, but keep the original form, right? So chemical transformation, these sort of things fall into here. And it's the halal and all that. Like I said, we can go back to the ulama and you can ask them about chemical transformation and then go through the fiqh books with you. Right now, we're just keeping it at a very high level. Inshallah, we'll continue on to the next part of the industry. I will leave room towards the end to have a question and answer. I know there's a lot being covered. I have breads, I have cheeses, and I have one other part that I'm going to go over, and then I'll open it up to the question and answer. So very quickly, making cheese. Cheese is an important part of society, European culture. A lot of cheese, a lot of cattle that they use. To make cheese, there's two types of cheeses that can be made. One is called a acid-base reaction, which is very popular in the subcontinent. And then there is the enzymatic version, which is popular in the Western world. The acid-base reaction is something called paneer. You take milk, you warm it up, you put a little bit of vinegar in it, or you put a little bit of lemon juice in it, and it causes the proteins to coagulate, make it into a solid, and it separates the water from the solid portion. You can scoop it out, and you get instant cheese. If you want to try it tonight at home, warm up some milk, throw some vinegar, you'll have cheese within a couple minutes. It'll have no flavor at all. You can either add some raisins on top, put a little salt on it. Traditionally, different people do different things. This is called the acid-base reaction. If you ever ate cottage cheese is a acid-base reaction, where they do it in this exact same way. However, there is another version. The other version is called the enzymatic version, where you take a type of bacteria and you add it to the warm milk, and you slowly have the solid portion, the protein portion, coagulate and separate from the water portion. The solid portion is called casein, and the water portion is called whey. And if you were to take that whey and dehydrate it further, you can get whey protein concentrate, which if there's any bodybuilders or those guys that like to work out, this is where your whey protein concentrate comes from. On a very high level, enzyme here means a catalyst, something that starts a reaction. Going a little bit more specific, rennet means the exact same thing, but indicating towards the cheese industry. If you go even more specific, you go say chymosin. Chymosin is the exact type of bacteria that is used, that has been isolated to create cheese in the cheese making industry. And so most people know that enzymes are used, or they might use rennet, but the actual name is chymosin, and that is what is used to make cheese and modern cheese. And this is what actually separates. So this here is found in the stomach of the cow. So the baby calves, they have a lot of rennet, chymosin, that is on the villi, and that bacteria is not part of the actual animal. As people grow older, they become lactose intolerant. The reason why you become lactose intolerant is because you have less of this type of bacteria in your gut to actually break down the milk that you are consuming. But as infants and as baby calves, they have a lot of this. And so You can get this from different animals, usually young animals, because they have a lot of this bacteria in there. It has been isolated. You can't grow it you can't ferment it and create it in a lab. And a lot of cheeses here in the United States do use microbial rennet that is made in a lab. But traditionally, European cheeses and some specialty cheeses, they use animal enzymes. And knowing the source of that animal enzyme is important. Who's eating Frito-Lays? Especially the Flaming Hot Cheetos. The question that everybody likes to ask. Flaming Hot Cheetos. So at one point in time, Flaming Hot Cheetos was made from animal enzymes. But that specific enzyme was made from a pig, right? From the stomach of not a cow, but actual pig. So it had pig enzymes in it. For the Hanafi madhab, you have some sort of leeway when it comes to lambs, goats, and sheep. And if the animal wasn't slaughtered properly, you have some leeway where you can consume cheese that was made with animal enzymes, and the animal was not slaughtered properly, right? It was slaughtered improperly, and you were to make cheese out of it. However, pork is one of those things where there's no leeway. It doesn't matter if you say it's wrong when you kill that pig, you can't take the enzymes and use it to make cheese. It just doesn't happen. So in the industry, they do use animal enzymes, and it's important to know the source of that enzyme. If it came from a pig, if it came from a cow, if it came from microbial sources, it's important to know what that is. You do not have to tell the source. You can just write enzyme or rennet, and you don't have to tell the source. Lipase, on the other hand, does not have to be labeled, and you do not have to disclose the source of it. It is something that companies voluntarily give out. Now, why is lipase used? Lipase is a enzyme that breaks down fat. So cheeses, anybody who eats cheddar cheese or any type of cheese, if you go to the store and it says like minimally aged for 6 months minimum, or aged for 12 months, or for 16, 24 months. Cheese gets better as you age it. If you leave it on the shelf for 6 months to a year or 2 years, it has a different flavor than if you were to make it the day of. Just like I said, that paneer that you make right away doesn't really have much flavor. You have to add things to it. The bacteria is what makes it taste good, and the fat that's in there, and the way that fat is broken down over time gives it a unique flavor. And so cheese manufacturers pride themselves on aging their cheese. You as an investor, if you have cheese and you want to put it into something, and you have to wait 1 year or 2 years to get your money back, that's a long time to wait. And you don't want to do that. So what do? You find out what breaks down that fat quicker, what speeds up that process of aging, and you make it shorter, so that you can turn around product a lot faster. And by doing so, you can add lipase, and lipase will break that fat down and make that similar tasting cheese and make it available to the public. Lipase becomes a problem because it's not in the stomach of the cow, it's in the intestinal lining. That's where fat is broken down. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, made the leeway for us to understand that the enzymes that are used in the stomach of the cow is okay, but that which comes from the intestinal linings is not within that ruling. So if this were to come from an improperly slaughtered animal, it would become highly problematic. So a lot of European cheeses use lipase in it in order to speed up that process. Breads are important. A nation is built or broken on bread. You could dictate a revolution based on bread. The French Revolution was based on bread. This is why in every country you go to, bread is subsidized, wheat is subsidized. Europe is crumbling right now because they're dependent on wheat that comes from Ukraine, which is dominated by Russia, who dictates what comes in out of that country, right? This is why they will pay ridiculous amount of prices for anything, but they will always subsidize wheat. Here in the United States, wheat has been subsidized since the Great Depression time. And there are a few other ones that are subsidized, but they will always subsidize wheat. If the price of bread goes up and the common man can't buy his bread, they will turn on the government and you will have major issues within society. Wheat is always subsidized. Traditional bread making is simple. You take water, you take salt, you take yeast, and you take flour, and you give it time, and it creates bread. It's a simple process. Everybody in the world makes it. There's nothing complicated about making bread, and it's a staple in everybody's home. However, your hamburgers and the different types of breads that you get here in the grocery store does not have a simple list like this. This is not a simple list that you find. You find over 100 different ingredients in some of them. There are a lot of ingredients that go into it. Why is it so complicated to make bread? Right? You put enzymes in it. You put dough conditioners. We're going to talk about datum and why datum is problematic. You put L-cysteine, human hair. Why would you put human hair inside of bread? Duck feathers, synthetic, chicken feathers, different ingredients, monoglycerides, glycerol, polysorbates, polysorbate 80, polysorbate 60. There's so many different ingredients that go into it. Why do you have to make bread so complicated? And it all goes back to the same thing as cheese making. Traditional bread takes time. You put it in, you make the dough, it's hard. You have to leave it, it has to rise, it has to come back down, it has to rise. You make it overnight, you make it in the morning. A good piece of dough takes up to 3 days. Phyllo dough takes forever, literally forever. And if you make puff pastries, no one will ever make puff pastry dough in their own houses because it takes so long and so complicated. Right? You better buy it from the store, from Pepperidge Farm, because it's so complicated. Now, the reason why you make it so complicated is because, same thing, if you have to wait days and days on end for your product to have a specific texture, to have a specific fluffiness to it, to have the gluten stretch out, you don't want to wait as a manufacturer. The longer you wait, the less return on investment. And so what do? You add different ingredients in there. And those different ingredients either give you the texture you want, speeds up the fermentation process, speeds up the process of rising, whatever it may be, and you can sell that product a lot quicker, or you can give it a longer shelf life. Most traditional breads get hard within 3 days if you don't freeze them, right? Some of these breads you can leave on the shelf for weeks on end, no problem, right? So this is why you add different ingredients in there. For us as Muslims, datum is very problematic. Human hair is problematic. Why is human hair problematic? Can anybody tell me why consuming human hair would be problematic? It's not like it's pig. It's not like it's something else. Why would human hair be problematic? Huh? It's out of the sanctity of a human being. We don't consume human flesh. The human body, the human body is considered to be sanctified, right? It's not something that you defile, something that you consume, something that you just take apart and, abuse as you like. If a dead corpse comes, you don't kick, you don't break his arm because who cares? It's dead, right? It's sanctified. The human body is sanctified. Even his hair is sanctified. You don't consume other people's hair, right? You don't take people's organs for no reason. This is why you have places in the world where, you didn't take organs. They just take it from people. And they're all missing a kidney because human life is not sanctified. The human body is not sanctified. We just take and you consume it as a product. And the Sharia protects the human body. And so even the hair, we don't consume human hair. Right? Human hair, a small percentage of it has cysteine in it. And through the different barbershops, they figured out that you can use that cysteine to increase, you can get a specific aging affected dough, and they would put it inside the dough. So in the 80s, it was very common. It was common to have this. Muslims are not the only ones that are just grossed out by this. Other people are grossed out. So what happens is the industry starts changing, and they find out that you can get it from chicken feathers, duck feathers, make it from a synthetic source. You get it from those sources, and you wouldn't have to make it from human hair. Now, datum in itself, this here dew conditioner. Datum is called diacetyl tartaric acid of monodiglycerides. Monodiglycerides we talked about earlier, and it's problematic because it's a fat, and the source of that fat is either animal or plant source, so you would want to know what the source is. Tartaric acid is highly problematic. Tartaric acid, common household name of it is called cream of tartar. For those that bake, they know what cream of tartar is. You need it for a lot of products that are out there. What are you making? A custard, you're making a meringue, you're making these different products. Cream of tartar is there. Cream of tartar is when you make wine, you put it in barrels, those wooden barrels, and you seal the top. As you give it time, it foams up. There's a foam that actually builds up out of it. In that foam, you can take it, dehydrate it, and when you dehydrate it, it creates a type of acid group. And that acid group is called tartaric acid. And the common household name of it is called cream of tartar. If you leave that out for about a year, the Orthodox Jews consider it to be kosher, so they can actually use it in kosher products. This is problematic because what do we say? All things that come from grapes and dates have the intoxicating portion and it has the nudges portion. You took out the intoxicating portion, but the byproduct of it is still considered to be nudges. And so this here, this cream of tartar, the tartaric acid, specifically in the Hanafi madhab, would be considered nudges, and we are not allowed to consume it. So those products that are made with datums that have tartaric acid becomes problematic. I do want to make an injection here. In the Maliki madhab, they do have a leeway here, and I'll let a person that's from that madhab explain why. But for us as an organization, we would not accept this. And for those that follow some of the Hanafi madhab, this would also become problematic to consume. And so, cream of tartar is one part. For those that bake, which I'm not sure how many people here bake, there is baking soda, there's baking powder. They function differently, they have different properties. Why do they have two different names? And why is it important for us as Muslims to know? Baking powder and baking soda. Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. Baking powder is sodium bicarbonate with cream of tartar, tartaric acid. Traditionally, you would mix the two together and create baking powder. And so baking powder is used in making cookies, it's made in making different types of breads, it's made in different types of baked goods. And so it's important to know if that baking powder also has cream of tartar or tartaric acid, which came from winemaking, which is a najis byproduct. And it gets very difficult because as normal consumers, why would you have to go this far back to try to figure out if something has halal ingredients or not? And so us as an organization, we do this job on behalf of the Muslim population. We ask the questions, we look through the ingredients, we do a lot of this on behalf of the Muslims, and then we make it available or tell the Muslim consumer whether they can or cannot consume it. So this whole chain is basically my job and the job of those individuals that work under me. So, but as Muslim consumers, this is what you would want to know. Now, for those that do use baking soda and baking powder, there's one out there that's called Clabber Girl. Clabber Girl does not use tartaric acid. Clabber Girl uses a cheap phosphoric acid that is not from grapes and dates, for those that are interested in using it. And also the Trader Joe's bread does not use tartaric acid. They use, I think, sodium or sulfuric. I forget which one it is, but it's not tartaric acid. And then the last one that I want to go over before we wrap it up is gelatin. Most people know gelatin for gummy bears. Everybody knows, they tell their kids, you can't eat marshmallows, you can't use gummy bears or gummy worms. And that's the extent of our knowledge to gelatin. What is gelatin? Gelatin is a collagen. What's collagen? Collagen is the stuff between your joints, so between your knees, the stuff that's inside your bone. That's what collagen, the stuff inside the hide. This is where you find collagen. They have vegetable type gelatin as well as an alternative, but traditional collagen is from animals. And if the animal is slaughtered improperly, that protein that comes from it would also be impermissible to consume. However, most of us just associate it with gummy bears, marshmallows, and gummy worms. They use gelatin in ice cream making as a bulking agent. They put it in yogurt as a bulking agent. They put it in dips as a bulking agent. Who's had grape juice or apple juice or most of those juices? Does your apple juice look like this? Most apple juice is clear. Most grape juice is clear. This looks like this. You can see the straw. However, when you take your own apples and you press them and you press your grapes and you press your oranges, none of it you can see through. How come all the stuff in the stores are clear and the stuff over here is not? It's because there's two ways of filtering that process. One is you can take ash or you can throw gelatin in it. So you throw gelatin inside the apple juice, it binds to the haze, the impurities, and you can scoop it out and get clear apple juice. If that apple juice or that gelatin is from a halal source, it's from a pig source, or it's from an improperly slaughtered cattle or any other type of animal, that apple juice becomes problematic. And this is why you'll find apple juices and grape juices that are kosher certified out there. Why are they kosher certified? Because the Orthodox Jews also don't consume pig. They don't consume these sort of things. Another way of doing it is that you would put ash inside of it. Or you use another one, which is the filtration process. Now, ash here is named, it comes from something called carbon black, or it is bone char, or sometimes they just name it as ash. But this ash also binds to impurities, right? So I made a quick thing. This one here is how you, for the juices. For the juices, you can throw gelatin or you can do a filtration process. And you can filter it and make it clear, or you can put gelatin, and the gelatin will be a problem. In the sugar industry, right, sugar is not white, and they also use a binding agent. And that binding agent here is called carbon black, ash, or bone char. And that's how you can also make your sugar white. Normally, traditional sugar is not white. Or you can do a filtration process. In order to make that ash, you have to take animals, all different types of animals, and you burn it at a very high temperature. And you disintegrate it, just like they do with human bodies when they disintegrate it and make it into a little ash pile that you can put into a cemetery. Now, if you were to take cattle that was improperly slaughtered, or other animals that are not permissible, and you were to burn them at over 1,000 degrees, and they were to turn into ash, are you allowed to consume the products that were made with that? What do you think? Yes or no? Our natural inclination is to say no. We were not allowed to consume that sugar that was made with bone char and these sort of things. Now, alhamdulillah, we have ulama, and they study fiqh, and they go through the books, and our pious predecessors already thought of these things and figured out these type of things for us. There's something called a tabdil mahiyya, or complete chemical changes. And complete chemical changes is something that the Hanafi madhab accepts, and we use this as a leeway to allow products into the market. Because out of necessity, right? So those sugars that were created with ash, that was disintegrated to the point where that original form no longer resembles where it came from, and it'll never turn back to it. you can actually use this. And in the fifth book, they talk about a donkey dying in a salt mine. And if a donkey dies in a salt mine and it disintegrates and it becomes part of the salt, are you allowed? Do you like throw that whole, pile of salt away, or can you use it? No, you use the salt mine, right? It disintegrated to the point where that donkey will never come back to its original form, and you won't even be able to see the traces of it. And so because of that, this here in the sugar industry would be allowed. Sorry, boar bristles, we'll talk about boar bristles, talk about civet cat, and then after that, we'll go into kosher industry and open it up. Boar bristles, important, because it's still associated with pastries. Anybody use a pastry brush for putting on like egg yolk or sugar confectionaries or something else? So, pastry brushes are called boar bristles traditionally. That's the name. Your coffee machines, they clean it with boar bristles. They use the hair of a pig is different than the hair of a cow, is different than the hair of a horse. And so traditionally boar bristles are used because they're stiff and they're hard, but they're soft at the same time, and they're tender. So they have these two weird properties where they won't break and bend, but they're also soft on the end. And so you would use this in order to, brush confectionaries with different toppings. Now, pig, like we said, if you take the enzymes of it, or if you were thrown in a well, you couldn't drink the water of that well. You can't eat that enzyme that was made, that cheese was made out of it, and that confectionery that was brushed with the boar bristle also becomes problematic because you don't want the hair of the pig to actually touch it either. And so one way to find out if your boar bristle is from pig or if it's from a synthetic source, which is made out of plastic, you pull off a hair, you light it, and you see what happens. If it ashes up and falls, it's from pig. Because human hair, when you burn it, it doesn't coil up, turn into a ball, it turns into ash and it falls. Same with poor pig bristles. However, plastic shrivels up and it turns into a little ball. And if it turned into a little ball, then you know your bristle is made out of synthetic plastic and you can actually use that. And these are things that we have to do when we go into places that have breads, confectionaries. We also look at the bristles that are used to clean the machinery and the bristles that are used to put on your confectionaries. Last one, civet cat. Civet cat is also in the fifth books. There's this cat, he consumes beans, coffee beans, and you can take that and it gives a specific type of aroma from his glands. So out of that defecation, you would clean it up and it would have this aroma in a specific flavor, and you could buy very expensive coffee out of it. Something again, going back to grass, want to tie it all back into grass, and how the FDA does not care if it comes from the glands of a civet cat. They will sell you this coffee and tell you that it's okay, and you can consume it. Last one, kosher certifiers that are out there, they also find gelatin from pigs non-acceptable, animal fats non-acceptable. They do allow human hair to be consumed because they don't consider that part of the human body. But you can also use the kosher industry out there as a form of trying to, as a form of filtering products. So the most stringent out there being the Orthodox Union. Up top, you would circle CRC, Chicago Critical Council, Cup K, Circle K, Triangle K, and then there are thousands of certifiers out there. No two are the same. The Orthodox Union, the first three being a little more stringent than the other ones that are out there. Halal industry has thousands of certifiers out there. No two are the same. There's a lot of one-man shows. In the kosher industry, a lot of one-man shows. So you should know which ones to use as a filter and as a guide. And like I said, not all stuff within the kosher industry is halal. and you can use them as a guide, but don't rely on them. The last pitch, just before I go into question and answer, is that you as consumers have the power to dictate what goes into your mouth and what doesn't go into your mouth, and there's a lot of power behind your money. If you wanted to have the manufacturer disclose what's inside their natural flavors, what processes they use, if they use pork bristles, if they use gelatin inside their manufacturing processes or whatever it may be, you can email them, you can call them, you can tell them to give you that information, or you won't buy from them, and they will be more receptive to that. Ultimately, we don't want to make it the consumer's job to go out and try and do all this work on their own. We as an organization will do it for you. You can have them and ask them to get certified or to get in contact with us, and we will do the heavy lifting for you. So with that, I will take any type of questions. I know we're at prayer, so I'll ask Mara here did you want to take the questions after prayer, which will make it easier? As people roll in, we can pray and then take questions. Inshallah. So my apologies for making it a little bit longer.
Jazakallah khairan, brother Abdul. Inshallah Rahman, right now dinner is ready, and inshallah we're going to have 20 minutes, 25 minutes inshallah roughly, and inshallah we're going to pray afterwards, and inshallah after salah inshallah we're going to do. Yeah.
This is for your class. After.